The vacuum of space is a black canvas glimmering with distant stars, each point of light a silent sentinel watching the vast expanse. For Captain Vesh of the Kavura cruiser Azara, it was both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The Nebula Serpent, Formation 6 sleek, silvery vessels slicing through the void glided along the neutral border, their prow lights reflecting off the cosmic dust drifting between star systems. To Vesh, every mission felt like a quiet dance with uncertainty. But today the silence carried an unusual weight. On the bridge of the Azara, soft hums and beeps accompanied every flicker of holographic display. Tactical officers monitored. Sensor arrays, communications specialists paced behind them, and physicists adjusted energy conduits feeding the sublight engines. Vesh stood at the central observation port, a floor-to-ceiling window revealing the infinite black beyond, and considered. The mission briefing once more. Patrol Sector 42. Maintain a buffer of 1 light hour from any human warship sensors. Alert command on any unauthorized deviation. Hostile engagement only if fired upon. It had been months since the last unconfirmed sighting of a human ship along the border. Since the great human expansion, tales of Earth's space navy were whispered in every starport, colossal vessels bristling with weapons so advanced they could unfurl devastating energy grids across fleets in seconds. Yet no one had ever actually encountered one until now. Lieutenant Suri's voice cut through his reverie. Captain, approaching Sector 40 to Coordinate 7H. No anomalies. Navigational channel open. Her dark eyes glinted with the focused intensity that had earned her the rank of tactical officer at just 23 cycles. Thank you, Lieutenant, he replied, turning back to the holographic map hovering in midair. The neutral border was a shifting fractal line, drawn and redrawn by diplomats, but enforced only by mutual fear, to either side. It was sacrosanct except to those with something to prove. Sensors are now clear, Suri continued. No conventional craft signatures, no subspace disturbances. All readings nominal. Keep scanning. I want multiple confirmations, Vesh ordered. Let's not let diplomacy lull us into complacency. Below deck, the engine room thrummed as plasma cores siphoned energy to both engines and weapons arrays. Commander Jan Tarek, the Azara's second-in-command, hovered over the subspace drive controls, his expression unreadable. Tarek was a veteran of skirmishes against the Orion Syndicate mercenaries who prized chaos above all else. He had rarely seen an adversary as disciplined and enigmatic as humanity. Captain, Tarek said, joining him at the observation port. Systems nominal. Weapons primed to stand by. No irregularities yet. Vesh nodded. Keep it that way. Let's maintain readiness but avoid aggression. Just then, Lieutenant Saren, the diplomatic officer, tapped Vesh's arm. Her brow creased. Sir, I'm picking up something, faint but distinct. Looks like a massive hull signature, slow-moving. On the view screen, a dot blinked into existence beyond the Azara's sensor range. At first, it was little more than static, but within seconds, it grew into a hulking silhouette that dwarfed the Azara itself. Its shape was unlike any vessel in the Kavura Archives, angular, blocky, and almost industrial in its architecture. All hands report in, Vesh commanded, scanning for classification. The bridge erupted into swift activity. Data streams flooded the holodisplays, hull composition, energy wavelengths, engine traces. The vessel's hull appeared patchworked, with reinforced plating and angular turrets. Long, rectangular hangars yawned like dark caverns along its flanks. Something about its design felt alien and terrifyingly efficient. Captain, Suri said, voice low, my filters compare this to human Navy schematics, but the match is inconclusive. This could be a new class or an upgraded variant. Dr. Leland, the onboard physicist, leaned forward. If this is human tech, the signatures imply a quantum phase array. Their weapons could ping our shields before we even realize we've been targeted. A hush fell. Even Commander Tarek drew in a long breath. Vesh steadied himself, feeling the weight of every life aboard the Azara. Open a comm channel, he ordered. Let's find out who or what we're dealing with. Instead of the customary chirp of acknowledgments and diagnostics, the COMM console crackled with an ominous hum. Then at full volume a voice boomed in the common tongue, translated instantly by the Azara's universal translator. "This is Admiral Sarek of the Fourth Fleet. Identify yourselves or prepare to be destroyed." The bridge went silent. Vesh felt a sudden emptiness in his chest. He remembered reading about Admiral Sarek's reputation: ruthless, precise, unyielding. If this truly was him, the Kavura Navy was facing its greatest test yet. "Lieutenant, patch me through," Vesh said, forcing calm into his tone. The console lit up, and Vesh replied, "This is Captain Vesh of the cruiser Azara, Kavura Navy. We are on routine patrol within the neutral border." "Who am I speaking to?" A flicker of disdain came through the comm. "We are humanity. Lower your weapons or be vaporized." Vesh's insides nodded. Humanity possessed firepower that legends could not capture. And yet, here they were speaking with him, not obliterating the Azara outright. Vesh glanced at his officers. Suri's hands hovered over the weapons console. Tarek watched his every move. Saren's face was pale but composed. "Shields down to stand by," Vesh ordered quietly. "Weapons offline. Let's show them we're no threat." The energy barriers receded into faint lines of light. The weapon turrets retracted. The Azara felt naked, vulnerable. One misstep, one misunderstanding, and they would be reduced to stardust. "Sensors indicate they're maintaining distance," Suri reported. "No target locks. No subspace charges being deployed." On the view screen, the human warship drifted closer, its colossal form filling half the window. Panel lights glowed, a constellation of activity suggesting thousands of crew stations within. Vesh could almost feel the weight of steel and command authority emanating from it. Then the comm crackled again, quieter this time. "You are warned. Cease patrol and return to your space. This is your only caution." Lieutenant Saren straightened. "Admiral Sarek, Captain Vesh here. We acknowledge your warning. We will withdraw immediately and respect the neutral border." "Good," the Admiral said. "We prefer peace but not at the cost of our sovereignty. Leave at once." The channel went dead. On the bridge of the Azara, relief and incredulity warred for expression. Vesh let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Lieutenant." "Suri," he said, voice firm but gentle, "plot a course back to Kavura's space. Maximum safe thrust." She nodded and tapped coordinates into the navigation console. The ship's engines hummed as gravimetric coils realigned for the jump. Tarek exhaled. "Remarkable creatures, humans. They carry their confidence like armor." Vesh studied the fading outline of the human ship receding in the distance. "We froze in terror at our first glimpse," he said softly, "but we survived, and the galaxy will never view humanity the same way again." The star streaks lengthened as the Azara slipped into warp. In the silent corridor outside the bridge, crew members paused, exchanging wide-eyed looks. They had faced legends and not been destroyed. Yet beneath their relief lay a new apprehension. If humanity could immobilize a Kavura cruiser with a single warning, what terrors awaited those less fortunate? Deep in the bridge's control core, a small indicator flickered. Error codes in the tactical matrix. Vesh reached down and disabled them. In this new age of interstellar politics, the only certainty was uncertainty itself, and the echo of humanity's arrival would reverberate across every star and ship in the cosmos. As the Azara accelerated homeward, Captain Vesh allowed himself a moment to wonder. What would they find when they returned to port? Would the Kavura Navy prepare for war or for a fragile peace, under the shadow of the greatest warship they had ever seen? Either way, the silent horizon had changed forever. The bridge of the USS Dauntless thrummed with controlled energy. Smooth, curved walls of reinforced durasteel glowed softly from beneath polished panels, while banks of holo-displays lined the perimeter in gentle arcs. At the center, Admiral Elias Hawthorne stood before the panoramic viewport, watching the 6 Kavura cruisers of the Nebula Serpent Formation drift into view. On long-range sensors, he studied their sleek silhouettes, each vessel no larger than a heavy destroyer, and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. For months, the human fleet had held back, respecting every treaty, every border line painstakingly negotiated by diplomats in glass-walled chambers. But no more. Today, the patience of the United Earth Space Command would pay dividends. Status. Report, Hawthorne said, voice steady but resonant. Commander Isabel Reyes, his chief tactical officer, tapped a series of commands into her wrist console. All systems green. Admiral, shields at 60% optimal, weapons arrays calibrated and powered to standby. Sensors confirm no hostiles beyond the Kavura flotilla. Very good, he replied, folding his arms behind his back. Let's remind them why we patrol these borders. The demonstration begins in engineering. Chief Engineer Rosario Chen monitored the main fusion reactors and gravimetric coils. Feeling the familiar pulse of power rising through the ship's spine, she toggled the output valves, diverting extra megajoules to the dorsal turrets for a brief calibration. Dorsal batteries primed. She reported into her comlink. Quantum phase emitters are locked on standby. Ready on your mark, Admiral. Mark. Hawthorne answered. Aboard the Dauntless, silence fell for a heartbeat. Then the dorsal turrets awakened in a chorus of deep mechanical hums, their long barrels extending from the ship's spine like the neck of a monstrous metallic beast. On the Dauntless's main view screen, the Kavura flagship Azara hovered near the neutral border's marker beacon. Its smooth alloy hull caught the violet glow of a nearby nebula, rendering it an otherworldly blue. Without warning, the Dauntless's targeting reticles swung into position, and a latticework of thin, emerald-green tracer beams sprang from the Dauntless's turrets, dancing across the Azara's shields in a silent ballet dot in the Azara's bridge. Captain Vesh and Lieutenant Suri snapped to attention at the abrupt light show. Within seconds, every sensor trace lit up with warnings. Incoming tracer fire. Projected impact in 0 point for seconds. Hull integrity testing positive. Beam penetration negligible. No live munitions detected. Lieutenant Saren paled. Captain, they're demonstrating targeting accuracy. Those tracers, if they were live, they'd punch straight through our ventral superstructure. Commander Tarek growled, fingers clenching the console. They're taunting us. But Vesh kept his voice calm. Stay steady, no return fire. Observe and record. Back on the Dauntless, Hawthorne allowed himself a small nod of approval. And demonstration, he ordered. The tracers winked out, and the dorsal turrets retracted with a faint hiss. Excellent, Hawthorne said. Open calm channel. The hail and the warning on the Azara, the universal translator flashed to life. Admiral Sarek's voice boomed, though the accent was unmistakably human and firm. This is Admiral Sarek of the 4th Fleet. You have trespassed the neutral zone. Identify yourselves and withdraw at once or be destroyed. Captain Vesh swallowed against a sudden dryness in his throat. The human voice carried more weight than any weapon. He turned to Lieutenant Saren. Saren, patch through. You have the deck. Saren took a trembling breath. Admiral Sarek, this is Captain Vesh of the Kavura cruiser Azara. We were on routine patrol. We acknowledge your warning and will withdraw immediately. There was a pause, one that stretched longer than any in Vesh's career. Then Sarek replied, cool and unhurried, very well. This is your only warning. Should you return, we will not hesitate. The channel went dead dot in the hushed aftermath. Vesh exhaled, and the Azara's bridge crew exchanged relieved glances. Lieutenant Suri keyed in the retreat course, while Tarek input the warp vector parameters. Course laid, Suri reported, voice soft but steady. Warp in T-minus 15 seconds. Vesh nodded. All hands, prepare for warp. Shields to standby. Weapons offline. Reflections in the afterglow once the Azara had slipped into warp. Hawthorne allowed the bridge's tension to ebb. He turned to Commander Reyes. Deploy the drones, he said. I want visual confirmation of their reaction during the demonstration. Reyes gave a quick salute. Launching for observation drones now. In the bay, sleek probe ships detached from the Dauntless's belly, their sensors pointed directly at the Azara. Haptic feeds streamed live footage back to engineering and tactics. Crews frozen at their consoles. Shields dropping, and a barely suppressed panic in every face. Back on the main bridge, Hawthorne watched the grainy images, more satisfying than explosions. The pictures showed something far more valuable. The clear realization that Earth's Navy had the upper hand, prepare a formal communique for High Command, Hawthorne murmured. Detail this encounter. Emphasize minimal force and maximum deterrence. We set a precedent today. Below decks, the crew celebrated in small clusters. Flight officers swapped stories about earlier encounters with the Kavura's sleek fighters in simulation exercises. Navigation specialists replayed the crossing vectors, marveling at how smoothly the Dauntless held formation. Chief Engineer Chen checked her console one last time and then allowed herself a grin. All systems nominal, Admiral. Looks like the old girl performed flawlessly. Hawthorne offered her a grateful nod. Thank you, Chief. Prepare for patrol. There may be other formations testing our lines. She tapped a few controls, and the hum of the reactor waxed to its normal, steady pitch. Ripples of power for Admiral Hawthorne. The significance of the day lay not in victory but in deterrence. He stood again before the viewport, the Kavura cruisers now dots on the distant sensor grid. He pictured their homeworld, vast continents weaving between lavender seas, and wondered what their people would do after this demonstration. He whispered to himself, more to the stars than anyone else, let them spread the word. Earth does not brook unauthorized incursions. His combelt chimed. It was Lieutenant Reyes, Admiral. High Command wants immediate transmission to the Klingric Coalition and the Verdani Collective. They're requesting copies of our logs. Hawthorne nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Send them, and include the drone footage. Let every corner of the assembly see what happens when you test human resolve. As the Dauntless swung onto its next patrol vector, sweeping along the rim of the neutral zone, the bridge crew settled into their roles. Their faces were calm, professional, but beneath each uniform lay a shared satisfaction. They had stood as a bulwark for humanity, demonstrating in the void what Earth's finest warship was capable of. In the high corridors of power, the galaxy would buzz with debate, praise for human restraint, fear of human might, and urgent whispers about how to balance diplomacy with security. But for now, aboard the USS Dauntless, Admiral Hawthorne allowed himself one final thought. Power, when wielded wisely, commands respect often more effectively than the most devastating weapon. And with that, he turned to his officers and said, all stations, report status. Ready to carry humanity's message through the silent expanse once more. The Kavura homeworld's capital city of Shkura burned with frantic activity. Long before the Azara slipped back into hyperspace, in the soaring spires of the Council Hall, High Chancellor Vorta convened an extraordinary session of the Imperial Assembly. Holographic maps of the neutral zone floated above the central dais, dotted with crimson flashes marking where the human warship had loomed into view. Every seat was filled, ambassadors, military governors, and elder statesmen, their faces lit by the cold glow of the strategic displays. Let it be recorded, Vorta began, her voice grave, that at 1743 Kavura Standard Time, humanity deployed a single warship and called for, and unprovoked into our patrol sector. Our weapons were rendered inoperative in an instant. She gestured, and the hologram zoomed in on the Azara as tracer beams danced across its shields. We encountered no aggression beyond their words, yet they demonstrated a power we cannot ignore. The hall erupted into debate. Delegate Melrick of the Verdani Collective, tall, lithe, his emerald green carapace reflecting the holographic lights, leaned forward. This was not merely a demonstration of force, he argued. It was a declaration of supremacy. If humanity can so casually immobilize a Kavura cruiser, what hope have we against their full armada? He tapped the holographic Azara, and the projection shifted to emphasize the Dauntless's size. We must reassess our defensive treaties. From the opposite wing rose Ambassador Theox of the Silicon, Ascendancy, her crystalline form refracting. Every color in the chamber. Caution, she intoned. We face a species of remarkable discipline. They struck only with holographic tracers, withdrew at our compliance, and spoke of peace and trade. This was a controlled exercise in deterrence, not an act of war. Provocation now would make us look reactionary. As voices grew louder, the corridor outside hummed with rumors in the sublevels. The Kavura Intelligence Service sifted through every particle of data, gleaned from the Azara's sensors. Within minutes of the encounter, Spies in nearby starports reported frantic communications, urgent backchannels from the Orion Syndicate, secret overtures from the Crystallid Imperium, and whispered alliances forming in the shadow markets of Mukari Station. News of humanity's show of strength spread faster than any diplomatic cable. Web of Alien Secrets, the Spiral Arms. The Verdani Collective convened its own emergency council on the jungle world of Cassander. Verdani envoys exchanged urgent communiques with the Klingric Coalition, whose bird-like delegates on Avior Prime peered at human starchurts with keen interest. If humans can immobilize Kavura shields, squawked Fleetmaster Avrik, they can do the same to anyone. Our only salvation is to forge our own alliance fast. On the crystalline bridges of the Imperium, the Crystallid ambassador dispatched sealed orders to their fleet commanders. They would feign neutrality in the public assembly, but in secret they prepared spider fleet small, razor-equipped strike, vessels ready to test human resolve. Let them know the price of intimidation. Crackled Ambassador Trizzle, her voice refracting into a cascade of tones. Meanwhile, in the verdant chambers of the Verdanivore Alliance, a third block formed. Smaller systems terrified by both the Kavura and human power. They petitioned the Galactic Assembly to convene a summatan unprecedented council where human and Kavura representatives would stand side by side. Their demand, a binding treaty to codify the neutral zone and establish clear consequences for incursions. Testimony before the Assembly a week later. The Grand Dome of the Galactic Assembly on Concordia Station swelled with delegates. Captain Vesh, Lieutenant Suri, and Commander Tyrek stood beneath blazing lights, their uniforms crisp, faces impassive. Before them stretched tiers of representatives, the Verdani's slender frames, the Crystallids' sparkling silhouettes, the reptilian forms of the Drathri, and orbiting high above the lone human delegation, aboard the Dauntless's ambassadorial shuttle. High Chancellor Vortis spoke first. We present the testimony of Captain Vesh and his crew, eyewitnesses, to humanity's first display of force. Let this be the foundation for our deliberations. Vesh stepped forward. We expected an attack, he said steadily, voice modulated, our weapons locked, our shields lowered, at the Admiral's command. Yet there was no destructive strike only. Precision tracers, harmless, but unambiguously lethal if they had been live rounds. Humanity sought to avoid bloodshed, but they made clear the cost of defiance. As Vesh spoke, holo recordings played across the concourse, the Azara's bridge lighting up with tracer beams. Vesh's order to stand down, the Dauntless drifting away. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Delegate Malric sat with clenched talons, while Ambassador Theox's crystalline form pulsed with quiet approval. When Vesh finished, Admiral Hawthorne rose from his shuttle's hatch. Tall and composed, he surveyed the assembly. We demonstrated restraint, he said simply. Earth has no ambition to conquer. Our mandate is security and free trade for all who respect the neutral zone. Should any power seek to challenge that peace, they will find our might and our mercy applied in equal measure. A hush followed his words, broken only by the mechanical hum of life support systems. Then the chamber's speaker, a rotund mollusk-like diplomat from the Pelagoth Federation, banged her gavel. Let the negotiations begin. A fragile balance negotiations, stretched for 2 cycles. The Crystallids offered surveillance data in exchange for shared technology. The Verdani demanded joint patrol rights. The Klingric Coalition insisted on a no-first-strike protocol. Humanity, for its part, held firm on 2 points: reaffirmation of the neutral zone boundaries and guaranteed safe passage for human merchant convoys. The Kavura, their pride bruised but their sovereignty intact, pressed for a clause forbidding demonstrative displays of violence, though they stopped short of labeling the tracer. Exercise an act of war. Behind closed doors, the Kavura Intelligence Service discovered that the human demonstration had coincided with clandestine sensors, tapping into the Azara's shield harmonics. Admiral Hawthorne had not only shown brute power, but had collected invaluable data on Kavura Defense's data that would reshape Earth's war plans. High Chancellor Vortis seethed at the duplicity, but dared not call it out publicly. Instead, she offered a compromise, a mutual data exchange program, limited to shield and engine metrics. overseen by a neutral commission. When at last the accords were inked, the grand chamber erupted in mechanical applause. The neutral zone accord spared the galaxy from open conflict for now. As confetti-like drones fluttered from the rafters, Captain Vesh and Admiral Hawthorne exchanged curt nods, each understanding that the peace they celebrated was as precarious as the vacuum beyond their ship's echoes of tomorrow. Back aboard the Azara, Vesh and his officers debriefed in the strategy suite. "We've bought time," Vesh said, tracing the agreement's clauses. "But every power we've encountered will test these limits. The humans will test ours in turn." Suri tapped her console. "Our patrol routes will change. We'll need new tactics, more decentralized formations, electronic countermeasures, perhaps diplomacy by force projection." Tarek cracked a rare smile. "At least we know where the cards lie. Better to play with open hands than be blindsided by the unknown." Above them, the neutral zone drifted silent and empty. Yet in every council, every starport, and every hidden fleet bay, the ripples of that first human warning continued to spread, altering alliances, fueling agendas, and reshaping the very balance of galactic power. The old order had cracked, and while a fragile peace held for now, the galaxy braced for the next first look. The neutral zone accord station hung in orbit around the verdant moon of Eoris 4, its great central sphere gleaming like a pearl against the void. Beneath a vaulted ceiling of transparent Shiram glass, delegates from every major power gathered. In the treaty hall, a vast chamber lined with monolithic columns, etched in the glyphs of ancient alliances. At one end of the hall, a dais bore the silver quills and crystalline ink wells that would seal the fate of the galaxy for decades to come. Admiral Elias Hawthorne stood in immaculate uniform before the assembly. His presence was calm, authoritative, the very embodiment of disciplined restraint. Behind him, the USS Dauntless drifted silently in geosynchronous orbit, as sentinel and symbol of humanity's pledge to protect, to deter, and to negotiate in equal measure. High Chancellor Vorda of the Kavura Empire rose from her seat. Her robes of state trailed like liquid night, and her eyes gleamed with a mixture of relief and resolve. Beside her, Captain Veshov, the Azara, stood at rigid attention, his uniform tailored and his expression impassive but alert. No one doubted that underneath his calm lay every lesson learned. Since their first fearful confrontation, a hush fell over the chamber as the treaty clerk, a neutral arbiter from the Pelagoth Federation, raised her slender tentacle. "Let this assembly come to order," she intoned. "We are gathered to affirm the neutral zone accord, to uphold peace through shared respect and transparent vigilance. Let the signatories approach." One by one, envoys moved forward. The Verdani delegate inscribed her delicate signature in rapid, looping strokes. The crystallid ambassador's quill clicked against the crystalline inkwell, each flourish fracturing the light. The Klingric representative, feathers dusted with ceremonial paint, stamped his seal with somber pride. Finally, Admiral Hawthorne stepped to the stand. He dipped the quill, paused to address the assembly, and spoke with measured gravity. "By the authority of the United Earth Space Command, and in the name of peace among all sentient species, I pledge that humanity will honor the boundaries set forth in this accord. We shall maintain patrols, share navigational data, and respond only to genuine threats. May this treaty mark the beginning of a lasting era of cooperation." With a steady hand, he signed. A ripple of applause echoed through the chamber as Vorda followed, her signature flowing like molten metal across the parchment. At that moment, despite centuries of discord and suspicion, a fragile consensus was forged. The neutral zone would stand inviolate, policed by collective will rather than by conquest. Unity in vigilance. In the days that followed, the Accord Station teemed with activity. Observation decks offered guests panoramic views of the Dauntless and the Kavura flagship Azara, now joined in goodwill orbit. Scientists and engineers from Earth, Kavura, Crystallid, Verdani, and Klingric labs collaborated to install joint sensor arrays, vast telescoping dishes, and subspace beacons that would broadcast real-time data on ship movements and environmental hazards. Lieutenant Suri found herself working side by side with Lieutenant Commander Park of the Dauntless's tactical division. They cross-checked algorithms for predictive threat analysis, comparing human quantum phase signatures with Kavura gravitonic waveforms. Your predictive filters are impressive, Suri admitted, tracing a holobar graph. But I think with your input on our shield harmonics, we can smooth out the response curve even further. Park grinned. And I'll need your help tuning our subspace decoys. Your species countermeasure techniques are second to none in the quadrant. Elsewhere, Dr. Leland and Chief Engineer Chen led a workshop on plasma drive efficiencies. For Fleet's chief propulsion officers crowded around a multi-species display, debating the merits of plasma torus containment and gravimetric coil harmonization. Even the crystallid Imperium's lead engineer, a being of shifting prismatic light, nodded thoughtfully, as Earth's technicians demonstrated a new coolant mix that reduced reactor strain by 17%. Through these calibrations, old prejudices softened. The crystallids discovered that humanity's industrial techniques could stabilize their delicate crystal matrices. The Kavura marveled at the efficiency of Verdani organic biofuel. The Klingarics found common ground in navigation philosophies honed through migration currents. Every shared breakthrough wove a tighter web of interdependence. Shadows behind the light, yet not all welcomed this new unity. In secret bunkers on distant worlds, dissidents fumed. The Orion Syndicate, deprived of wars to fuel their black market arms trade, plotted raids against smuggling convoys ID'd as carrying joint alliance technology. Radical factions within the Kavura underworld whispered of submission to humans, and signed pamphlets rallying merchants and miners to strike. On the fringe colony of Drosh Prime, Verdani extremists sabotaged a newly constructed sensor ray. Explosions rattled the plains of bioluminescent fungi, and cries of "down with Kavura capitulation" echoed through stone halls. In response, Kavura intelligence dispatched rapid response teams to secure alliance projects. Admiral Hawthorne authorized a discreet human advisory contingent to bolster local security protocols. These skirmishes were minor compared to the silent war waged in the Assembly's corridors. Crystallid lobbyists pressed for expanded veto powers over joint patrol mandates. Klingric diplomats tried to water down inspection clauses. Humanity's insistence on open data access met resistance. Yet each pushback only reinforced the alliance's resolve. Debate remained vigorous, but civilized, a far cry from the violent confrontations of old. A beacon for the future 6 months into the new era. The first Neutral Zone Festival was proclaimed a celebration of interstellar cooperation. On Eoris IV's terraformed plains, fields of iridescent grasses swayed beneath twin suns, and miles of market stalls offered goods from every culture. Verdani luminescent textiles, Kavura alloyed crafts, human synthetic organics, crystallid, crystal sculptures, and Klingric feathered art. Delegations exchanged cultural performances, dance, song, holographic poetry, creating a tapestry of shared heritage. Captain Vesh, invited as an honored guest, watched from a VIP plateau as Lieutenant Saren performed an ancient Kavura water drumming ritual, alongside Commander Reyes in a synchronized human percussion piece. The rhythms interwove flawlessly, a metaphor for this new symphony of species. Admiral Hawthorne approached Vesh as fireworks of bioluminescent spores arched across the night sky. Not bad for two species that nearly destroyed each other, he remarked with a wry smile. Vesh inclined his head. Your demonstration was fearsome. Your diplomacy, even more so. Hawthorne glanced at the crowd. We've shown strength and openness. Now it's up to everyone else to keep the tempo. They stood in companionable silence, watching the crowd's unity, an amalgam of alien forms dancing under alien skies, yet bound by a common hope. Epilogue. The silent watches the celebrations drew to a close. The fleets resumed their patrols dauntless, and Azara side by side, subspace beacons humming, sensor rays scanning the dark expanses. In the command centers, monitors displayed real-time status of every merchant convoy, every neutral outpost, every uncharted asteroid field. High Chancellor Vorda and Admiral Hawthorne, now co-chairs of the Neutral Zone Commission, signed off on daily reports. Each day's data shared without prejudice reinforced the value of vigilance tempered by cooperation. In the hushed watch stations, young cadets of multiple species trained for joint operations, learning not only tactics, but also the protocols of interspecies understanding. Tomorrow's officers would grow up knowing that unity need not be uniformity, that respect fortified by transparency could outlast fear fortified by force. And so the galaxy entered its new dawn, not with the roar of battle, but with the quiet hum of collaboration. The first look at a human warship had frozen the fleet in terror, but the next look, the 1000th look, would find them standing together, watchful yet hopeful, under the silent, watchful stars.